That. From Sammy Wilson now to Brian Wilson, two men with the same name, but that's about all you've got in common. Brian Wilson, you're very welcome. Green MLA here in Stormont, one of not too many, it seems now, if the current Environment Minister would have his way. He thinks you are the one who is blinkered.
I find that his talk there incredible. Basically, I thought the climate change deniers were actually extinct, but Sammy isn't really an obsolete example of what people thought 20, 30, 40 years ago. But basically we've moved on significantly since then. The scientific evidence is overwhelmingly in favour of the suggestion that climate change is caused by man. There may be other factors involved, but the vast majority of climate change is caused by man, and we've got to do something about it. And Sammy's view is that putting up the tax on cars or something like that, but this is going to be a great inconvenience. It's not a great inconvenience when we consider the alternative. The alternative is the future of the planet.
Well, that particular one, let's just deal with that policy for now. I mean, what it's going to do is force people, maybe you have a car that's 3 or 4 years old, possibly to go out and buy another car. That's not exactly environmentally friendly, is it?
There's no reason why they should buy. I mean, the car's already, they've already got their car. Why should they not pay the extra? I mean, larger cars, if you pay an extra £200 on those cars, it is pretty insignificant in relation to the cost of the whole car. I mean, we're getting a lot of whinging from people who are actually be able to afford 4x4s and things. I mean, really, that is insignificant compared to the price of their original outlay on cars.
Now, if his views on climate change, you say they belong to another era, one species you thought should be extinct perhaps, but does it really matter? I mean, the Northern Ireland Minister really can't have any impact really on climate change, can he?
Well, certainly is obviously he's in charge of the environment. He's got to create a situation where basically policies are representing his philosophy. If his philosophy is that we don't really need to do things to improve the environment, our philosophy is that everything policy he makes should take into consideration climate change. I mean, this Assembly has already passed a motion calling on climate change to be central to all the policies decided by the Assembly. I mean, while the Assembly has actually agreed in this motion, in fact, when they come to implement it, and particularly Arlene Foster wasn't particularly enthusiastic about this particular area, but Sammy seems to be totally taking a very extreme view on this. It is important. I mean, the environment is important, and people are becoming more and more recognising that issue. And I think, I mean, the fact that I'm elected to Stormont, I think, illustrates that people are concerned about the environment.
The statistics he gave there, Brian Wilson, he said that Northern Ireland was responsible for 3% of all the UK's emissions, and the UK was responsible for 3% of the world. So he seems to be reckoning that we can get away with being, if you like, a high-carbon economy just in this little corner.
Well, I mean, that is sort of pilot-like, washing your hands of any responsibility for climate change. We all must take responsibility for climate change. And, I mean, if we are trying to set an example, we want the third world, or developing world, to actually implement policies, environmentally friendly policies. So therefore, we cannot expect them to do that if we are not adopting the same policies. We may be a very small portion of the world's economy, but we've got to play our part. Everybody has got to play their part.
Sammy Wilson is well known as a politician for liking to stir things up.
Yeah.
Do you think in this instance maybe the bark is going to turn out to be worse than the bite, that actually, you know, he's just quite happy to have you all up in arms at this stage?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's obviously been provocative in his initial statements, but I had hoped, I mean, I knew, obviously, when Sammy was on the back benches, he could say some outrageous statements, and I hoped he didn't actually mean those statements, but what he is saying now is sort of reinforcing what he's already said. And I think a minister should be more responsible. I mean, I think we've got to actually act more responsibly now that we are not in the backbenchers and come off with sort of more outrageous statements.
Brian Wilson, many thanks indeed.
Bye.